Hey tarot friends, it's Dustin from Modern Metaphysicae, and today I thought we could hang out and take a trip through all of my Thoth decks. This has been something that a lot of you guys have requested of me since we started doing the Thoth Study Hall, which is a part of Scala Metaphysicae, the channel membership program. We're all kind of going through as a group and reading, understanding Aleister Crowley's Thoth Tarot by Milo DuQuette. And we're having a blast with that. If you're interested in joining us, it's not too late. You can find information about joining Scala Metaphysicae down in the description box down below. Down there, you'll also find links to all of my social media and things like that where you can connect with me, as well as a link to my personal website where you can book a tarot reading with me. So be sure to check all of that out. So a lot of people were asking me about my collection of Thoth decks, both the traditional Thoth and then sort of like Thoth clones, like the Hardy Tarot is often considered a Thoth clone. And so what I've decided to do is to break this video, this collection, this mini collection, into two separate videos. So the first one, which you're watching now, will just be my Thoth decks, all of the different editions that I have, both vintage and new, and kind of why I have them, and kind of some of the differences between the different editions and things like that. And I'm just gonna kind of show you guys what I have. And then the next video, part 2, which I will put a card up here once I'm done with that one, and then I'll also link it in the description box once it gets published. Part 2 will be all of my Thoth clones, so any deck created by someone other than Crowley and Harris that follows the Crowley-Harris Thoth system, as well as some of my Thoth, what I'm going to call Thoth adjacent decks. So things like the Hermetic Tarot and the Golden Dawn Tarots, which a lot of people kind of lump into this style of or this system, I guess you could say, even though the RWS is in the RWS and the Thoth are both influenced by the Golden Dawn system, of course, but I just wanted to kind of share those with you guys. So we're going to start off with all of these today and a couple others that don't fit on here. Most of these are out of print, I will say that. The newer editions, which I show at the very end, I'm going to show these kind of in order of age. So oldest editions first to newest editions last. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, I will put timestamps down in the description box down below as well, so that you can jump around and compare different editions if you're curious like that. So yeah, be sure, guys, don't forget, if you like this kind of video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't done so already, and leave a comment down below. Let me know which version, which printing of the Thoth you enjoyed the most, and I'd love to hear what you guys' thoughts are. So let's dive into my Thoth collection. Okay, so the first deck I wanted to talk about is this version of the Thoth that I have. This is often referred to as a white box B. It was printed it was printed for Samuel Weiser. And this one, I haven't seen a ton of these floating around. I usually see the white box A's and the white box C's, and those numbers come from an old blog post that has been circulating around for a number of years on Tarot Garden, and I'll be sure to link that in the description box below. It goes through some of the different versions and editions of the deck and kind of how you can identify them. So if you're curious about that kind of stuff, you can find that down below. But this is my oldest edition of the deck. These were printed very early on. And I believe they were mid to late 60s, if I'm not mistaken, but they came in this kind of two-piece slide box, which I kind of really love. And this is in immaculate condition. I got this one off of eBay a long time ago. The backs are full bleed, which means there's no border. The cardstock's really lovely. It's a little on the it's not glossy, but it's different. It's hard to explain, but as you can see, the borders kind of have this very plain treatment compared to the newer editions of the deck that we see, right? And like just for comparison, let me actually grab. We'll keep this one around throughout this whole thing. This is my green box newest edition of the deck, and we'll keep this around just for comparison. So you can see here the color difference, and the difference in the border is pretty huge, right? The print quality on them is very different. Also, this being the newest gold border edition that was printed by AGM, okay? So you can see that the borders have this kind of like simple treatment. It did have this fun little card about the Odo Templi Orientis in it, and kind of where you can connect with them and all that fun stuff. But as you can see, the whole deck is treated this way. I love this printing. I love the details that you can see in the cards. You can also notice that there is some variation in the border colors, and that is how you kind of identify this as a white box B. So it's a beautiful edition. I've had it for some time. I don't read with this one, to be perfectly honest. This is kind of a collector's edition of the deck that I have in my collection. But I do like to pull it out and look at it and compare it to the newer editions, because you can really see how different the cards appear in terms of their coloring and the details even from these older editions, which is really interesting, right? So that is my oldest deck in my collection. So next up, we have this little beauty. This is my Greenie, and this came again in really beautiful condition. This actually has kind of some weird, this is printed in Belgium, and the box was printed in the US. I'm not exactly sure about the specifics of this edition of the Greenie. There are a couple editions of Greenies out there. And when you hear people talk about a Greenie, the reason why they refer to it as a Greenie is, of course, these green tinted borders. They're like this mint green. And again, as you can see, we get a little bit closer to that modern printing in terms of color, but you can see that there is quite a bit more detail in the cards with these older editions. I love this Greenie. The Greenie is actually one of my favorite editions of the Thoth. It's really beautiful. I love the borders. I know a lot of people really strongly dislike the borders, but I love them. But as you can see, it's a pretty cool deck. Again, the backs are full bleed, and I will read with this one every once in a while, not all the time. This does also have the guidebook, which does it have a date in here? Yeah, this specific edition looks like 1983. You get the Ordo Templi Orientis card, a blank card, and the universal hexagram included in this one as well. So someone ripped off the little tabs in my box. So it's a beautiful, beautiful edition of the deck. Same size. I just really love the artwork and the green borders. These are a little harder to find these days. I will say that Greenies can be pretty hard to find. They seem to be the most popular amongst people who enjoy vintage Thoth decks. So a lot of people will look for Greenies for their Thoth decks. But that is my Greenie. Next up, we have, I'm going to share these two at the same time. We have two versions of the Aleister Crowley Thoth Tarot AGM blue boxes. These, I believe, were printed in the late 80s and the early 90s. I think their printings went on through the 90s as well. My small version here is from 1986, the year I was born. And the fun thing about this version of the deck is that it has the triple Magus cards. So when Crowley and Harris were creating the deck, they went back and forth with a number of different sort of designs for several of the cards, most famously the Magus. And so some of these other decks, they started including the alternate sort of depictions that they had come up with that didn't make the final cut. Just because, as many of you guys know, right, when you print a tarot deck, it gets printed on these big large sheets, and 78 cards is a little bit of an off number. Most of the time they're printed in sheets that number up to 80, and so you always are left with a couple of extra cards, which is why you get like the you know, the universal hexagram card, etc. And so instead they chose to print 2 of the alternate arts of the Magus, which is really fun. A lot of people really love these. Some people will shuffle all of them into the deck. I personally don't do that, but it's a beautiful edition of the deck. Now, the triple Magus is only in the pocket edition, if I'm recalling correctly. As you can see, the larger edition does not have those. So mine's shuffled around a little bit here. There's our main. Oh no, it does. It does have actually all 3. I forgot about that. So it does have all 3. As you can see, I don't pull these out very often because, again, these older editions, I mostly have them as collector's edition kind of decks. So again, you get all 3 of the Magus cards there. And as you can see too, with this larger one, you can see that the borders are a little bit still towards that green shift compared to the normal, or the newer editions of the deck. But it's a really lovely deck. You can see that in this one, interestingly enough, the colors are a little bit brighter than in the most recent edition of the deck. So those are my blue box AGM editions. And these, I believe, I think these are the first editions that started being printed with these white borders around the back compared to the older editions of the cards. So you get this nice little white border. And of course, these newer ones have the gold, and they're way brighter. It's very interesting, right? So those are the blue boxes. Okay, next up we have this gold edition of the Thoth Tarot. This was printed a little bit later. I think this was printed in the 2010s. I want to say it was like 2012. Let's look here. But this was a collector's edition that was put out by AGM Urania, and it has a lot of little. Here's the certificate. I'm not sure. I don't think it has a date in it though. Well, maybe in the back here. Maybe not. It has kind of all the breakdown of all the different copyrights for all the different bits and pieces. But this was a little collector's edition that they put out some time ago. It's in this really crappy paper tray. No box, but the deck itself is gilt with gold edges. And you can see here that the coloring is quite more chromatic, I guess would be the best descriptor for this one specifically. You can see a lot of the details a little bit better than the newer editions. It's a really nice printing. It still has the white bordered backs. It's very similar to the 90s printings that AGM did for distribution, and in my opinion, this is kind of my favorite coloring of the deck, it's really lovely. As you can see, it's just really vibrant and it really pops. The cardstock's really nice. I love this art card. because of all that. You can really see all the details in it, which I really love. So yeah, this is a really, really nice version of the deck. This is out of print, as are all the other versions of the deck I've shown now. If you're interested in finding any of these, you're going to have to hunt the bays of the E's. But yeah, it's a beautiful version of the deck. You can see it's quite different. So it's a lovely deck. Again, I don't really read with this often. This is strictly a collector's edition sort of thing in my collection. Okay, next up we have the Aleister Crowley limited gold edition by US Games. So this came in this really nice kind of velvety box. These were printed and distributed in 2020, if I recall correctly. And yeah, they came in this really cool little box. Again, I have this completely as a collector's edition kind of thing. It has a little guidebook in here, which has excerpts of the Book of Thoth. So you get some of his sort of quirky interpretations of the cards. It's a nice little sort of hardbound book that has gilt edges and this sort of like foil embossing. It's really nice. The deck itself is again this gilt version of the deck. I think honestly this is the same deck as the previous collector's edition that I showed you guys. You can see the coloring is nice and vibrant, and the details are nice and sharp and crisp in all of the imagery. And again, I really prefer this edition of the deck itself. It's just really, I don't know, it's just superior compared to the newer editions of the deck that just seem so washed out. The backs again have that white border, and like I said, I'm fairly sure that this is the same deck, just different packaging than that last one that I showed you. So the gilding is that same sort of like shiny gold gilding. The cardstock's pretty much the same. You do get the Ordo Templi Orientis card and the Universal Hexagram cards in these, and it's a lovely addition of the deck. So again, I don't really read with this. It's very much kind of a collector's in my collection kind of deck. So, and then let's see, we have this little guy. This was gifted to me. I have no idea where this came from, although I think it's probably a not legal copy of the deck because it has one of these little things on the bottom. But a friend gifted this to me. It's just a teeny tiny little pocket edition of the deck. Pretty standard stuff here. Nothing crazy. The backs are different though, which is really interesting. I don't know why the choice was made to turn the Rosy Cross into an Ankh. So that's an interesting choice, to say the least. I don't know if these are available or not. This seems to be from tarotdivination.org. If it is, I have no idea. But it is a version of the deck that I do have. Next up, we have this version of the deck in this little wood box. This is actually one of my earliest copies of the deck that I ended up modifying. This is kind of my workhorse Thoth deck. And it's, as you can see, it has been trimmed of all of its borders. This was the large size, so this size deck I literally just cut. You can see I cut all the borders off of it, and then I rounded them and edged them, and it pretty much comes out to almost standard kind of tarot size when you do that. So this is a standard sort of tarot card size, and you can see it's pretty close to being the same. Now, whoops. That being said, this version is from the late 90s, early 2000s, and this was a green box. So same packaging as this one. which is this. This box design hasn't changed, just the cards on the inside, the print quality and things like that have changed. So this is kind of comparing apples to apples from one of the newer editions to kind of what they're selling now. And again, this is the most recent edition here on the right of the deck. Let me see if I can find, I didn't reorder these because that would have just taken me a bajillion years. But you can kind of see what it looks like, trimmed of its borders. And this took me a long time to get familiar with, right? Because you no longer have the titles to help you. And you, you know, you kind of lose some of those little symbols on the bottom that, you know, that got shuffled in. I probably passed it, didn't I? So as you can see, this kind of has that same print quality that we saw in those collector's editions that isn't quite there in this newest edition. You can see a lot more detail and kind of how the watercolor and things like that was laid down in his like legs here compared to in the newest edition of the deck here. So, and again, the backs are the nicer backs. I don't know why they made this change on the backs. I'm not a huge fan of it, but this again is my kind of workhorse deck. I prefer it without the borders. Personally, it's just how I like to work with the deck. And it's well loved and shuffled and and used. I've used this for readings at different shops and events and things like that, and it's kind of my go-to version of the Thoth. So it's a great little addition of the deck. And then last but certainly not least, we have the newest edition of sort of the smaller size cards. These follow the new format. You get this new little white book that has info. Not much has changed in the white book from my understanding from the older editions, but there's that. Oh, this needs to go with the other deck. And then you get the two cards that you get are the Book of the Thoth Egyptian Tarot Part 2 sort of title card with this OTO card, and then you get a picture of Mr. Crowley himself, which is kind of fun. The larger one has that as well. And again, these are the newest editions. I got these strictly for reference and just to have copies of, just to see what the differences were and to kind of play with and just kind of have copies that I don't mind beating up, one might say. As you can see, both the backs have this kind of garish border around them, and they're both kind of like muted and a little washed out. So if you're getting a new version of the deck, this is what you're getting. If you were to go probably to your local bookstore or onto Amazon or whatever, this is the version of the deck that you would be given. And again, these are all being printed by AGM. The packaging in Europe is different than the packaging here in the United States. However, the cards that you're getting are identical. So US Games has a contract with them to distribute the deck in North America, and so the packaging is going to be different than what you see over in the UK or in Europe. And I'll throw a picture on the screen of what the boxes look like over there. But again, the insides, the contents of the boxes are identical from my understanding, unless someone wants to correct me, but I'm pretty sure they are the same. But yeah, these new editions, the cardstock's not bad. I just wish that they weren't as kind of muddled. They feel kind of muddled, if that makes sense. So that is the newer editions that I have in my collection. So those are all of my Thoth decks that are standard Thoth, Aleister Crowley, Lady Frieda Harris style decks. I hope you kind of enjoyed seeing all of the different ones in my collection. Like I said, wait for part 2 if you're interested in seeing all of my kind of like Thoth clone or Thoth adjacent decks. So we'll talk about decks that follow the Thoth system, like Maline's decks, which I have waiting to be filmed here, which are absolutely beautiful and gorgeous. Love these so much. And some other sort of Thoth decks that people kind of group into that sort of system, like the Golden Dawn decks and things like that, so that you guys can get an idea of what I have in my collection and what I use and what I don't use and why I have them and things like that. So let me know in the comment section down below if you enjoyed this, which one was your favorite, which ones you have, and I hope that you guys are having a wonderful day. And as always, guys, remember, everyone is fighting a battle that you know nothing about, so be kind always. Bye, everybody.